quickly we'll move on to our next speaker, and then we can have more discussions when the time permits. Dr. Patange sir, you can start your screen share. Avinash Patange, consultant ophthalmologist, director, Academy for Eye Care Education, consultant Vitro-Retina Uveitis Service. He has been associated with LBP 2001. He is the director of GMRV campus of LBPI network. He has more than 100 presentations in both international and national conferences, 103 peer-reviewed publications to his credit, and authored more than 9 chapters in various. He is also the co-founder of RetNet India, a group with more than 950 surgeons in India, and his main area of interest is in endophthalmitis and infectious uveitis. So over to who will be talking to us popular TV.
Yeah, thanks Srinivas for the invitation and the opportunity. So this evening I would like to speak on 3 ocular signs which is suggestive of tuberculosis, especially in endemic country when we have this issue of what tuberculosis would look like. My presentation would primarily revolve around the 2 publications what we have on clinical signs which could suggest possible tuberculosis in a country like ours. Now, having said that, the clinical signs, we have the anterior segment and the posterior segment ones, and we are very well aware of the anterior segment ones with the broad posterior synechiae. Then you have the granulomatous keratic presbyopia, so on and so forth. But to me, to be more precise, sticking on to what I would like to speak, the posterior segment is the one which gives away the possible of clinical diagnosis of ocular tuberculosis. So understanding the posterior segment signs is very important than the anterior segment. Now, having said about the anterior segment signs, I've started my presentation talking about the 3 clinical signs. And these are the 3 clinical signs which one has to be aware of. First one being subvascular pigmentation. Second is focal kinking of vessels. And third is reactivation within a scar. So I like to repeat again: subvascular pigmentation, focal kinking of vessels, and reactivation within a scar. So let's talk about the first one, subvascular pigmentation. Let's look into the genesis of how the subvascular pigmentation looks like. So this is a patient who presents with unifocal choroiditis lesions with an adjacent neurosensory detachment involving the fovea, hilum folds, and just superior to it, you'll see an hyperpigmented scar, 2 hyperpigmented scars which are there. So this patient had tuberculosis, treated for tuberculosis with anti-tuberculosis treatment, obviously. So he goes away, and then you can see where he had that choroidal lesion, the lesion shrinks into a small hyperpigmented scar underneath the vessel. And this is what I was alluding to, the genesis of hyperpigmented scar underneath the vessel. So I don't like to stress on you have the subarachnoid type of lesion, which is just superior to it. That's a different ballgame altogether. But just to re-emphasize the point, how subvascular pigmentation scar happens. And also one has to understand the choroiditis lesion, if you have this mental image, is such a big lesion, but when it shrinks, it is such a small scar. Now, this is another patient who has subvascular pigmentation. Once you get to see, this would help us to make a diagnosis of tuberculosis in these patients. Now, let's look at the other clinical sign, reactivation within a scar. Again, think about possible tuberculosis. Now, here's a patient who has a cloud leaf-like lesion. And if you look at the peripheral, you can see the scarring which is there, partially pigmented, not hyperpigmented, but there is a lot of necrosis right in the center, few specks of hemorrhages. And this is what I would like to emphasize on the activity which is similar to a necrosis, which is right in the center, surrounded by a scar. Now, when someone talks about a scar and reactivation, the first thing which comes to mind is toxoplasmosis. That's how we were grown with. So, but the way in which we can differentiate activation of a toxoplasmosis from a tuberculosis is the toxoplasmosis activation always happens at the edge, like what you get to see in the image to the left of you. Whereas in tuberculosis, I like to re-emphasize it is not at the edge, but within the center. That's how one can differentiate between tuberculosis and toxoplasmosis. So having spoken about it, if you like to imagine this image and then equate it to the lesion which you find in the lung, again, you were able to understand that most of the infected macrophages and the epithelioid cells are all associated in the center. The necrotic material is all in the center. So that's very similar to the image what you get to see clinically. And it's a very good representation of the pathology on histopathology, what you can see inside the eye. If we get an opportunity to see one, that should make you a diagnosis of tuberculosis very easily. Having spoken about subvascular pigmentation, the genesis of subvascular pigmentation, and also about reactivation within the scar, mainly to emphasize the necrosis surrounded by the chorioretinal atrophy. Let me take you to the third important point to make a diagnosis, which is known as the kinking of retinal venules. Again, a point to think about possible tuberculosis. Now, this is a patient, if you concentrate on your left extreme on the temple side, you'll see underneath or adjacent to the subvascular pigmentation, a mild kinking which is there. So this is another important clinical sign which helps us to make a diagnosis of tuberculosis. Now let us look at this slide. And this is an image which I had picked up in way back in 2003, but it was such a puzzle for me, which I got to solve many years later, but I just had to preserve this image. And why I would say this is a bit puzzle was I could see a subvascular pigmentation there. At that time, it didn't mean to me much what this could be. And what was glaring was along the infratemporal arcade, you'll see a retinitis patch, and then you have vitritis, some hemorrhage. But what perplexed me was this sign, like superior temporal, you can see some whitening, a white lesion within a scar, right? So I could not understand what it could be at that time. But time went by, I got to see other patients like what I showed you before. And then when I had to have this analytical thinking of putting the kinked vessel, activation within the scar, in a patient who has an activation, then I could make an understanding that we are dealing with possible tuberculosis. The next possible condition which we deal is unifocal choroiditis, which is close to the disc and the macula. The question is whether it's infective or not, because this is very close to the disc and macula. Clinical takeaway sign, presence of Chiaralis vasculitis would help you that you're dealing with an infective condition. Most commonest cause of infective unifocal choroiditis in the posterior pole, again, tuberculosis, most commonly. Now, its close cousin, sarcoidosis, is also there. And this is one picture where we can see that is subvascular, you have choroidal lesion because of tuberculosis, diagnosed by Chiaralis, treated with ATT, then heals with a subvascular, small, tiny pigmented scar, whereas in sarcoid, it heals with a very faint pigmented scar. So this would be my last slide, and I'd like to re-emphasize about the three clinical signs: subvascular pigmentation, kinking of the vessel, reactivation within the scar, and never forget the Chiaralis if you have a doubt whether dealing with infective lesions or not. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for a brilliant presentation. I just wanted to ask a general ophthalmologist question here. Would a vitreous biopsy or an AC tap help in the diagnosis, or it is so clinical that you don't need to do those things at all?
You asking me or?
Asking you.
Yeah, okay. So I don't rely too much on the PCRs. People have spoken about PCR very loudly, and then it went into oblivion. So there are other markers which are there, but by and large, I would say there is some clinical observations. We have to understand, say I'm a very clinical person. I don't rely too much on the PCRs for my clinical diagnosis for infective lesions. I have 2 points for that. Number one, so is the pattern, if we recognize the pattern of an infection of an organism which presents, that will decode the mystery very easily. And number two is, unless you know what you're dealing with, we can't have a blanket of PCRs being done, because it's just like shooting in the dark. We might not be able to pinpoint at a diagnosis. The easiest example I can give is endophthalmitis. Send it for PCR. You have tons of bacteria and organisms coming at positive. You don't know what to treat. So those are the two reasons why I always like to hear the language, what the clinical signs speak, and help me make a diagnosis as much as possible clinically. If not, give a trial of steroids, an anti-tuberculosis treatment, and then see for the response and come to a diagnosis.
Thank you. Dr. Srinivas?
Yes, thank you, Avinash sir. Very nice presentation. You brought out 3 important points. My question to the panelists, will start with Lalit sir and Shobhit and Dr. Anand sir. Three points which Dr. Avinash sir has made out is kinking of the venule, subvascular pigmentations, and reactivation within the old scar. So, how frequently do we see this according to your scenario, and what are your diagnostic criteria? Because these are the very valid points which he has brought out. We want your views on it.
The only thing I wanted to ask from Avinash, I agree with you see, reactivation within the center is the most convincing thing because he collaborated with histopathology also. But what I was wanting to ask was retinitis by tuberculosis, because it's primarily a deep choroiditis rather than a superficial retinitis. That's what I wanted to clarify, because you see, toxo, herpes, and all, they are primarily retinitis pictures, whereas TB by and large in majority is a deep choroiditis, and that is what explains you see this pigmentation and kinking.
Yeah, absolutely. So it's more of a correlation. In fact, the paper with Nursing was published. So these bacilli are found at the retinal pigment epithelium. So that's the reason why you can get this hyperpigmentation. And if the lesion is predominantly at the choroid, you don't get to see this hyperpigmentation unless the RP is tickled to a certain level. So predominantly they are chorioretinitis, even they have to enlarge, but retinitis is very rare in tuberculosis.
So can
I would like just to congratulate Avinash how lucidly he showed the difference between, and simply the difference between sarcoid and tuberculosis on clinical grounds. That's an eye-opener for me, because that's a very confusing diagnosis. We come across and we order HRCT of the chest and this and that, but this is a very beautiful example he has given. I think it's a lovely take-home message, at least for me.
Thank you.
I'd just like to congratulate.
Thank you.
Anand sir, we would like to know how commonly do we see these findings in your cases? You're muted.
So beautiful presentation, as usual, very lucid, Avinash. I'd say, we see these. I'd just like to add that, to what he said, that central pigmentation with TB is also correlated to the fact that it's a central caseation necrosis which we see, and that's why, I think you mentioned that. So it correlates beautifully to what we see in histopathology. I would just like to ask him, in the setting of HIV, do you see a difference in any of these three cases? If a patient presents, as an immunocompromised patient, can there be a difference? And of course, I've seen these findings. Of course, very rarely some of these chiral findings. I agree with him completely. We do see this, but I just wanted to add that in the setting of an immunocompromised patient, which we are beginning to see a lot more, can there be a more protein presentation with respect to the subvascular or subretinal pigmentation?
No, it's a good question, but if I have to ask, if I have to reply, I don't get to see that many tuberculosis in HIV positive patients like the posterior segment manifestations. It's quite rare. So I would not be able to speak with conviction about the question what you raised. So I will reserve my comments.
I want to ask Avinash one half-second question. Avinash, in early 80s, there was an article by Dr. Badrinath, Dr. Patnaik, and it was a review by Dr. Nagpal, where they had shown that kinked blood vessels can grow towards kink up towards the vitreous and have a vitreous fibril attached to them, and to be very classically thought to be eels. Were we confusing a lot of vasculitis at that time because tuberculosis was not that well known, the choroid, with or is this kinking purely a surface kinking?
Absolutely. So I think Dr. Shobhit, you have been mentioning about the chorioretinal anastomosis and the vessels coming out through the scar into the vitreous.
No, the vessels loop up into the vitreous.
Yes.
It's the same course. There's no choreo. Yeah. There is a chorioretinal scar, but the vessels tend to loop up into the vitreous cavity rather than pursuing their course on the surface.
Right.
That's known as a point. It was in the North American clinics. It published by Dr. Badrinath and Dr. Nagpal and Dr. Patnaik, early 80s.
Yeah.
I think last point, sir. Apurva, you're there. I think she made a point that what might be the cause for the kinking of the underlying venule because of the overlying vitreous inflammation. What is your point on it, sir? Avinash, sir.
You're asking me or Apurva?
Yes, yes, Dr. Avinash.
Yeah. So I think when you have the kinking of the vessel, it's seen to a certain extent, it is because of the structural abnormality of the scar which is there. And also to a certain extent, the hypoxic related changes which can be seen because of the vascular occlusion, which can cause these type of changes. That's a prism, that's a hypothesis what I can suggest to you. And Apurva has also mentioned about overlying vitreous inflammation. So we have identified one more sign, but I'm not going to say it now. I'm going to publish it and then I'm going to talk about it. So we have identified a new sign again, which is to some extent what she has alluded to here. Yeah.
Great. Thank you, sir. Thank you very much. We'll have again more discussions on that. Over to Chitti.